So, hello and welcome, guys. How you doing? Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, before we get started, and I will remove this bottle. Before we get started, I want to say a few things. First, and the biggest news for me at least, is next week I will be on vacation. I will be out of town, out of touch. You will still get videos because I was working hard today to get them all ready. But you will see videos, but I will not be there, so I won't be responding to comments, emails, social media, and I will be spending exclusive time with my family, so I will be disconnected. And the other thing is the Forerunner series. I hope you guys are enjoying that. I hope you like that series. I had a lot of fun making it. It was too hard to make, but it was really fun to have the Forerunner for a week, and it was really eye-opening, and I'm actually considering one now, but we'll see how that goes when I replace my car, which will be soon, hopefully. And after the Forerunner series, which we have 2 more videos left in that series, which you will see this week, I will go back to some hybrids. A lot of people have asked, and I'll give you a quick sneak peek. I'm actually putting together a video for lithium-ion versus nickel-metal hydride battery, advantages, disadvantages, and which one is better. The other thing that I want my core viewers to know about is I recently did a engine rebuild at the dealership. Not actually a rebuild, it's a whole engine assembly, actually, and I took pictures. I'm planning to make a video. It's not a video, it's going to be pictures, but with narration, so you can see how an engine comes in a box, if you would, in a million pieces, and it is put together, and I documented it very well in pictures. So you're going to see that and look for that in the future. Having said that, guys, I hope everybody's enjoying their Saturday and you all are doing well. Let's not waste more time with me blabbing around. Let's get to some questions. So, Only Truth in the World says, new owner of a 2007 Tundra 5.7. Previous owner let the shop run synthetic blend. Synthetic blend is not a problem. What do you think of running seafoam treatment and Lucas oil stabilizer with a fresh Mobil 1 full synthetic? Well, honestly, I'd say I don't like Lucas products or products that you add to the oil. If you do the maintenance on time, you shouldn't have to add anything additional. Mobil 1 should be more than sufficient. And that truck actually in that year doesn't require synthetic oil. That I believe took still 530 or 520, so it didn't need synthetic oil. I would just switch to Mobil 1. Don't worry about the seafoam unless you have reason to believe that the maintenance was not done on time, or you potentially could have oil sludge buildup or something. Then I would use not necessarily seafoam. I wouldn't recommend seafoam on its own. Could work, but I don't have experience with it. But an engine oil cleaner could work, but then continue it on with oil changes every 5,000 miles, and you should have no issues. So Vishal says, got a 2007 IS250 at 130,000 miles. I have put 15,000 miles on it, changed catalytic converter with Walker catalytic converter, AF sensor, and O2 sensor. Installed cash can, got the car, walnut cleaned, 70 miles an hour, less than 15 is normal. Was it a smart choice to install the cash can? Can also, the long-term fuel trim is negative 21, last 2 times I checked. So the negative fuel trim being a negative, the long-term fuel trim being at negative 21, that's actually not good. It's running a little too rich, so it's trying to cut back the fuel. At this point, I believe it should set codes, and you want to investigate mass airflow. One thing that was somewhat common with these, and I'm trying to remember the model here, IS250. If the carbon buildup was cleaned up, air-fuel ratio sensors, you actually did mention that you'd replace them. Now, if you didn't install original ones, I would look, potentially they could be an issue. But one thing with these were exhaust leaks. If you have the slightest exhaust leak, it would actually throw off the air-fuel ratio sensor. So I would look at that. And you also asked, what else can you advise? Yeah. Check for exhaust leaks, especially those walkers. They never sit right. They always leak here and there. And any leak before the O2 sensors or the AF sensors specifically, it'll throw it off. It's very simple scan tool diagnosis. You want to rev the engine up, see whether your voltage is for the air-fuel ratio sensor. If it goes over 4 volts in closed loop or not, were not good. I did have a few videos on air fuel ratio sensors, how they work. You might want to review those so you know what normal should be and how they operate, so you'd know. So Louis Fahad said 2011 Prado with a 1GR FE makes a whine noise from the front if the engine have taken the accessory serpentine belt off. Very good idea. Whine is still there. So folks, for everybody else, when you have a noise concern from the engine, the first thing you do, like Fahad did here, remove the belt, because then you isolate if this is a belt-driven accessory noise or an engine noise. Now, that 1GR FE, and unfortunately, we don't have the Prado in the US, so I'm not exactly sure if it's new or old 1GR. The 1GR, even in both of them, more the newer one, it is a whiny engine, and that's just the way they are. If you are sure this is a whine that is abnormal compared to an exact same car with the exact same engine, the oil pump is noisy on these, and it does get a little noisier as time passes. Doesn't necessarily mean there is a problem, but make sure you're not chasing a ghost. That's what I'm trying to get to here. Excuse me. These engines, they do make a whine normally, so compare it to another one before you go chasing after an oil pump noise. So Matthew Calmer says, sorry if I don't spell your name right. I have a 2012 hybrid. How can I tell if my hybrid batteries are nickel metal hydride or lithium ion without removing the rear seat? So if memory serves right, 2021 Corollas, they all came with lithium ion. 2020, they could be either or. Then you'd have to remove. But I'm almost sure 2021 came with lithium ion only. So another question, 2011 ES350, where can I get the original brake pads? And did you know that the parts.lexus.com, which is the official website for Lexus, has no brake pads for my car? Well, they should have brake pads, but another place, and again, I'm going off memory here, Lexus Parts Now or something like that, Google Lexus OEM parts and look for other website. Otherwise, just get them through the dealership and ask for a discount. Usually they're not going to give a big discount, but I'm going to look into this one. They should have brake pads on their parts.lexus.com or even parts.toyota.com. So Timothy says 2009 RAV4 Sport, tire pressure at 32, but tire light blinking, then stays on. How do I reset? So when your light is blinking, and I have a video on that goes into depth, but when your light is blinking, then it stays on solid. This means that you have a concern. You have a problem with one of the sensors either not reading, potentially more sensors not reading. But in this case, you'd want to get codes. You need to have a scan tool that is capable of reading these codes. You get the codes and then see which sensor is bad. Usually at this age, at least one, maybe two is bad, and go from there. But one thing I'll tell you, as far as the car driving, I wouldn't be concerned. This is not a top priority to run and get it fixed and all that. Just at your earliest convenience, get the codes checked and go from there. I'm not sure if the Kdss app or the scan tool is capable of doing that on your car, but you could actually do the diagnosis yourself. If you are able to find which sensor it is, you can replace the sensor and then have a program by Kdss. So Ed says, what maintenance should you do to avoid blown head gasket on a 2014 Prius? So I will say one thing about this generation Prius. For everybody else, we're talking about a third generation Prius from 2010 all the way to 2015. They're notorious for blown head gaskets. And honestly, I have seen some that just start leaking at 50,000, at 200,000, or I've had actually one viewer brought me a Prius with 138 or 140,000 miles that is all original. He owned it since it had like 7,000 miles, if I remember correctly, religiously maintained it. I mean, this is a very, and I don't know if you are watching, this is one of the cleanest Priuses that I've seen ever. And he has no blown head gasket, no oil consumption, no EGR problem. I took the EGR apart and I was shocked that it's never been cleaned, opened or anything. And it looked like new. So the thing with head gaskets is there's a lot of theories about it. First one is your maintenance on the coolant is not good. Now, some people will go the 10-year, 15-year until they replace the coolant. That's not a good idea. You'll want to replace it every 50,000 miles or 5 years, whichever comes first. The other thing is the water pump. People miss the signs of the water pump going out. Now, this is not this model doesn't have a mechanical water pump where it'll start making noise or leaking. This is an electric water pump. And most of the time, and especially in cold weather, the water pump could be not working good. And won't register any problems. But then come hot summer, and that's when you'll see the problems. But that continuation of the water pump not being able to keep up the flow and work as it should is potentially one of the reasons you get a blown head gasket. So if I owned a Prius and I was concerned about the head gasket, I mean, for me, I would just fix the head gasket and move on. But as a driver, you'd want to potentially first replace the coolant, and then if you want to really take it to the next step, replace that water pump. They're not really difficult. They're very simple DIY. And the bleeding of the coolant's also not difficult. It's very DIY. That would be the most I would do. So, Farshid says, 2016 Highlander Hybrid, 53,000 miles. Is the battery filter service or cleaning DIY? If so, how please? So I have a video on that. It is very, step by step. I would look through my channel pages and it'll walk you right through it. There are 3 vents underneath the back seat. You take them out, they all have 2 screws. Each one has 2 screws. Pull it out, and life is good. So let's see the next question. So Abdul says, planning to buy a hybrid RAV4. I live in Saudi Arabia. Will it handle the extreme heat? I don't know if the battery is lithium or not. Well, it depends which year you're buying, Abdul. But as far as heat and hybrids, and let's just briefly go into this. They prefer cold weather, but if you leave them parked outside and in sub-zero weather for like a couple months, that's also not good for the battery. As far as heat, they're more than capable to handle the heat, but you need to be aware that you're going to have to do your part as well in helping them cope with that high heat. First, as much as possible, try to avoid parking them under direct sunlight. If cover is possible, cover the car. That's a lot better. And the second thing is, you don't want to forget about that high voltage fan filter. Always keep it clean, keep an eye on it. And whenever you drive the car, and of course, if you live in high heat, you're always going to use the air conditioning. But whenever I've seen people, I'm actually originally from an area with high heat, and I remember people not using the AC sometimes. They're just used to the heat and they don't really bother them. In a hybrid, you always want to use the air conditioning, because remember that air-conditioned air inside the cabin is what cools the battery. So you want that to be as cool as possible, so it would cool the battery and you'd have no issues. All right, let's go on to the next question. So Solo Overland, when's the new Forerunner coming out? What do you expect from it? So honestly, I'm the type of person, if it's not in front of me, I don't try to give opinion. But so far, and my guess is as good as the media's, and everybody likes to speculate and all that. But it looks like 23 could be the year where we see something new. And my pledge to Toyota, not pledge, but my ask from Toyota, if you would, is please don't change it as much as possible. Don't put a 4-cylinder in there. And if you're gonna, yes, the Forerunner, by the way, did have a 4-cylinder, actually, even this generation at the beginning, but they were super rare and they were not really great. I just hope they don't go, all change it and make it all modern and this and that, because then they lost the essence of what makes the Forerunner a great truck, which is it's ancient. That's all I can say about it. So Wilson says, hi AMD, 2007 ES350, 125K. Every time I start the car, there's a loud clunk the moment the engine fires up. What should I look for? So in a noise diagnosis, I would need to hear it to know what's going on. But I think vaguely I know what you're talking about. The 2GRs tend to make that kind of an abrupt start when they start, and you'll hear that single clunk. If this is what I'm thinking about, it's normal. But just to be sure, so I would give you a correct answer, try to film a video, send it to me, either email or social media, and send it, or upload it, better yet, upload it to YouTube and comment on one of the videos, and just give me the link and I'll listen to it and we'll go from there. So Hector says, I have a 2006 Toyota Forerunner with 240,000 miles. Should I replace the springs as well or just the struts and shocks? That depends. So if you're replacing the struts anyways in the front, yeah, replace the springs. It's a good idea. But if you're trying to do this on a budget, you need to measure the ride height, because the main thing that the springs do is control the ride height and hold the truck up. So if the ride height is, it's definitely dropped a little bit because these springs have been holding this car's weight for 15 years. But if it's very small drop and you don't have concerns with the way the truck sits, it doesn't feel too low to the ground, it's even front to back, then I wouldn't worry about it. But one thing, if you're doing those front struts, I would put new mounts. If you're anywhere in rusty land like I am in Chicago, those mounts will never come off, and you'll have to cut them off and destroy them basically to get the spring out. So I would put mounts in that case. So Lexus Man and Plays app, how you all doing? I hope you are doing well. So Tim, Toyota won't add the auxiliary fan for my Tacoma's AC. It doesn't get cold enough. Well, they should. There's actually a TSB, if I remember the number. I was just looking at this today. I think 0093-20 is the TSB, and it is actually covered by warranty because this is their mistake of not putting this. They should have put this. I mean, every car should have, especially cars with mechanical fan, they should have an auxiliary fan, but they didn't on this one, and they're admitting it. And this is the problem when Toyota dealerships try to be the hero here and try to protect Toyota's warranty money. Guys, I'm having issues with my internet. Just give us a moment and we'll reconnect. Can everybody see me now? I'm thinking we're having some internet connection issues. So I think we are back. Let me just find that question again. Sorry, guys, the internet's acting up today. So going back to the AC auxiliary kit, mention the TSB to them, and actually you can Google it and print it, and you'll have all the information that the dealership will have. If you have this concern, if you're not in Alaska or in Chicago in the middle of the winter, obviously at that point they're not going to do it. But as long as they're able to verify it, where it's a very simple thing, start the car AC, park it, and then wait. The AC performance will drop, and you see the pressure shoot up because there's not enough cooling in the condenser. That's usually your typical sign that there is a problem. Okay, let's see where we're at. So Mateo says, I want to service the differential on my 2019 Forerunner. The manual says to use 75W80. Can I use 75W90 instead without any issues? Yes. This is something that has been debated, and I'm not here to debate. I'll just tell you what we have been doing for years, and we haven't had a single issue from the real world. 75W90 is good. Even 8090 is good. We've used it. We never had issues. I'm talking customer cars that bring it in the dealership, have the fluid replaced, 100,000 miles later, nothing happened. So there is that for you. So KMN says, I have a 2019 Highlander 17K. In tight, slow turns, there's a slight whine from the steering column. Any ideas? So this would have electric steering. When you say slow turns, tight, slow turns. It could be just the motor trying to move, because if you really listen closely, the that assists with turning is actually mounted on the steering column inside the car. So when you turn the wheel, you're going to hear it. If you really pay close attention, you're going to hear it. So I'm wondering if when you're getting to that end, it's trying to move and it's bottoming out to the end, and that's why you hear it whining. But that's the only thing I can think of in that case. So Grandmaster says, what are your thoughts on the more modern Toyota Corollas and hatchback? So I'm assuming you're talking about 19 and up Corolla hatchback and 2020 and up Corolla sedan. I think they're really good cars. I don't like the 1.8 liter. I don't think it's a bad engine, but I think if you're buying a car this high tech and this modern, get the better engine in the SE, which is the M20A, which is the newest engine with a lot better, more efficient, and actually, I think in every aspect better. But the hatchback already has that, so there's no model that doesn't. I think they're really good cars, and they really haven't really had many issues that I've seen. They've been doing really good. Other than maintenance, we haven't really seen them much for anything else at the dealership. So Jason says, I know it's more so Lexus, but doesn't RX 350 have any good or bad that a buyer should be aware about? So if you review my videos on Highlanders, the Lexus is essentially a Highlander with a suit. It's a very nice truck, but again, you want to make sure the maintenance is right. Especially if you're buying a used one, let's say, you want to make sure the maintenance is done on time. You want to make sure these cars were taken care of. Some people will buy a Toyota and Lexus and they'll just be like, well, I bought a Toyota or a Lexus. I'm just not going to maintain them. I'm just going to drive them till the wheels fall off. And that's the biggest mistake you can make, because trust me, and I survive on broken Toyotas. Let's just put it that way. That's one way to put it. If you don't take care of that high quality, well-made car and it falls apart because of the lack of maintenance, the problems will cost you more than a German car. Because remember, Toyota parts are made to last, but they're made well and they cost a lot. The parts that you never hear about, engines, transmissions, all this stuff, the stuff that most people maintain and never have any issues with, when they do fail, they cost a lot of money. And the only reason they fail prematurely is lack of maintenance. So if you're buying one of these trucks used, maintenance. First thing. Otherwise, they're really good cars. They're just because they are Lexus and they're fancy doesn't mean that they're complicated and high tech. No, they're exactly the same as a Highlander. They're good cars. They have their Achilles heels. One thing I'll say about the 350, if it's an older one with a 2GR, oil leaks. Make sure you look for oil leaks when you buy one. If you're buying this new, don't worry about it. If you like the car, buy it. They're really good cars. The 8-speed on the newer ones is a little clunky, but other than that, they're really good cars to buy. A little on the expensive side, but compare it to the Highlander because they're really the same. So K Drake, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. 2020, 7K miles, Forerunner. After braking when hit and accelerate, fear like his transmission is slipping, engages harshly. Opinion. So first, this is under warranty, so you'd want to bring this up, whatever I'm going to say, you want to bring this up to the dealership's attention in case. But the transmission on the Forerunner is bulletproof, doesn't have any issues. However, it is slow because, remember, this is the same transmission essentially from the previous generation. It has been around for a while, and it's not your modern high-tech transmission where it's very quick, it's very slow. So when you brake, then immediately hit the gas, it's just going to have a minute of kind of limbo where it doesn't know what to do until it engages. But still bring it up to the dealership's attention, have them check the fluid level. That's a standard check for any car with a transmission shifting concern, and go from there. So Nitgundo, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. I have to change the electronic control transmission fluid, 60K, and what fluid for the transaxle on 2021 Venza. So The 2021 Venza is going to take WS. It's a hybrid. Just a simple drain and fill should do it. It should take around 4 to 5 quarts if memory serves right, but it's just standard WS fluid, just like you see behind me. Buy it in bottle form from the dealership. I wouldn't use any aftermarket fluid or anything, and that's as simple as that. It's a very simple fluid to replace, actually. All right. So BOM says, I have a 2008 Camry Hybrid 175K, bought it at 130K and mostly out highway miles on it. Is it realistic to expect 250,000 miles on the original battery while caring for the battery filter? Honestly, yes. I mean, I've seen Camrys go up to 250,000 miles or even more than that. But if you're at 240 and the battery goes out, I wouldn't be upset. I mean, if you bought it at 130 and you're getting at least 100,000 miles out of it with basic maintenance, I wouldn't be upset if that happens, honestly, because, you know, when you get up in miles, and this is an 08, remember, age is also playing a factor here. As you get older, things do tend to start slowly falling apart, but can you realistically expect 250,000 miles? I would, but if you get a little bit less than that, it's not a disappointment, I would say. So Garrick says, I have been thinking about getting a Forerunner. How much difference does the Kdss make in on-road ride quality? Personally, and this is going to be more of a personal thing. Some people are going to notice it immediately. I am one of those people. Kdss, that nosedive is a lot better in a Kdss truck than a non-Kdss. But some people will say, and I noticed comments today on today's video, it's still there. It's not going to be handling like a car on rails, but it's a lot better. You're going to notice a difference, and that's what I like when you buy an expensive option or something additional that you had to add to the truck. I want to notice something significant, not barely notice it and that's it. And the Kdss, in my personal opinion, is worth it. It's worth every penny. And however, I'll say this: if you're going to buy one, look at drive a Kdss one, if possible. They're super rare to find, by the way. Drive one and then drive a normal one. That's how you'll know if it's worth it for you, because this will vary between every person and how they judge the ride quality, if you would. So Rocky says, what brand of wrenches do you use? So this will be a whole tool conversation, so y'all can thank Rocky for opening the subject, but let's talk about it briefly. I use Snap-on, Craftsman, Matco, Mac Tools. I use Gear Wrench a lot, actually. I really like Gear Wrench. I am not the kind of technician that thinks, oh, I have to buy the best of the best and the most expensive and the most shiny. I actually look at how much I'm using the tools, because I'm not going to spend a small fortune on a tool that I will use once every year, but I will spend any fortune needed on tools that I use every single day. But I am not one to buy sets. I don't like sets, especially when I'm working on a dealership and I work on the same cars with the same sizes. I like to buy the expensive stuff in singulars, because I'm not going to buy a tool wrench set for $700-800 and that has a 15, 16, and an 18 that I'll never use on a Toyota. So I'd rather buy the ones that I need and then have a general set for in case I get that one car that has different sizes, or non-Toyotas that we do get at the dealership. But the main brand my personal favorite brand is Snap-on. They're very expensive, but they're worth every penny, because for my daily use stuff. Because yeah, sure, you can buy Craftsman, fill your box with Craftsman and it'll be fine. But when that tool breaks, yeah, it has a lifetime warranty where you can go and replace it and all that good stuff. But now you have to go and replace it. The good thing about Snap-on, Matco, and Mac Tools, they come to your shop. The tool guy, I don't know if everybody wonders how we get our tools. There's a tool truck, comes to the shop, any warranty stuff gets taken care of. We usually have a truck. Maybe that's a subject for a video. So Moon River, thank you for your super chat, sir. Just got a 2021 Camry Hybrid XLE 2 weeks ago. Aside from following all the maintenance that will help it go over 200,000 miles. Any transmission maintenance? Yes. So every 60 to 90,000 miles, drain the fluid, fill it up, and that's about it for the transmission. You'll never hear any issues with the transmission. Stick with original fluids whenever possible. Some stuff you can get away with, but engine oil, I personally like Toyota oil, but you can go with Mobil 1 or some good brand that you had a good experience with. But the transmission fluid every 60, 90, coolant 5 years, 50,000. The first replacement can go to 100, but if you're really going for that 200,000, I would replace it every 50,000 and keep up the maintenance on time. You should have this car. That model is a really good one, the 2021. Oh, Jose, and I'm getting the message again that my connection is not stable. Are we back? Yes, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on with my internet today. I hope you all can hear me well. Okay. So let's go back here. Jose Pablo, Lexus GSF or Lexus ISF, looking to buy a V8 car. Personally, I'd go with the GSF just because I'm a bigger guy and I think it's their prices are expensive. They're both very expensive cars, but I personally don't like the ISF, not because of the engine, not because of everything, the whole package. It's just too small. Perhaps as a performance car, that's a good thing, but the GSF always appealed to me better size-wise, and I think it's a good, truly good size, and it still have the good performance. But if you're going pure performance, put it this way, if you're going pure performance in this car, ISF, because it's lighter, smaller. If you're going for a nice V8 car that is also serves as a family car, I would go with the GSF for sure. So Luis, thank you for your super chat. Just purchased an 07 Camry V6. Noticed that it lags sometimes when driving. What do you recommend I have a mechanic check for first? So that lag, the first thing I would do is check your spark plugs. Were they ever replaced, depending on how many miles you have? And then the other thing is clean the throttle body and clean very well. That usually takes care of that lag that they have. But another thing is the transmission. Is it shifting? Do you have any codes? Check engine light, pending codes. That's what I start looking into. Okay, so this is a good one. Horimat says, can you clarify beyond what the owner's manuals say about conditions for severe driving conditions? And that will be a video actually that I'm thinking about, even though I've talked about this a lot, but it seems like the most missed subjects by owners. So severe driving conditions, if you idle your car a lot, if you do short trips all the time, and worse, in cold weather, like below freezing, below 32 Fahrenheit, all of these are severe driving conditions. If you do towing, that's for the trucks. If you do towing, if you do, and remember, towing, most people will just look at towing, well, that's not a, I don't tow. But you always have 5 people in the car with their luggage, with their stuff. You always have stuff in the car. Well, that constitutes as towing because it's weight. It's not about just pulling something behind you. It's the weight you're carrying in the car and the load you're putting on all these components. So these are some of the things that constitute severe driving conditions. Of course, dirt, rock, dirt roads. If you drive a lot on dirt roads, that's also considered a severe driving condition. Each one of these conditions will change some aspects of your maintenance that people really need to be aware of, because that's when the fine print comes in and works against you. And you always want to read that section of the maintenance, like every page front to back, because you need to understand, well, does this apply to me? Because you don't just go wasting your money on maintenance on severe when in reality you're not. But I'll tell you right off the bat, a large percentage of people actually fall under severe, and I wish the manufacturers would just do away with that. And it's okay if our cars need a little bit more maintenance, because they cost a small fortune. And I don't see a lot of people, especially people that care about their cars, that just go, oh, I know it needs maintenance, I just don't care because I want to destroy my car. I don't think there's anybody who paid a small fortune for a car that would do that, but I wish they would do away with these severe and just make it one thing people follow and life's good. So Grandmaster says, do you think Toyota will continue to be reliable going into electric hydrogen cars for the future to keep up with Tesla? I don't think Toyota looks at Tesla as competition, and I haven't. Again, I do not want to. The last live stream, I ranted on about the Hyundai and Kia, but I will say this about Tesla: wait for Tesla, because the oldest Tesla is 8 years old. Remember, they really started making cars in 2013. Yes, they did the Roadster before, but wait when they're 15 years old and when the first person has to replace a battery on their own, and then we'll see how that holds up. But going back to Toyota and their reliability, the thing with Toyota is they really don't like to rush technology. They've always been like that. This is one of their core things, is that they watch everybody trample in the mud first before the highway is built over the mud, and then they cross it. That's just the way they've been, and that's what got them the reputation. When it comes to electric cars and hybrids is one of those that they jumped head over heel first. And they had some issues at the beginning, but now they are the undisputed king of hybrids, because they just took the same design and they kept improving on it and doing better and better and better, to a point where they are very reliable cars now. On the hydrogen side of things, and I'll be honest with you, I am not trained on the Mirai because they're not really sold in Illinois. They're only sold in California the last time I checked. But from what I hear through my contacts, through the community of technicians, they don't have a lot of issues. They have the oddball thing here and there, but they don't have a lot of issues. But it's not a good judge because there's not a lot of them either. So I guess we'll wait and find out. But if Toyota continues their current pace that they're going right now, not 20 years ago, now, I think they will be reliable cars. I don't think they would push things out the door rushed. And if they do, Toyota has a tendency of, okay, we messed up, let's take care of people. That's what they usually have done, and they're a good company, folks. They really take care of their people for the most part. So another question here is it possible to get information about older Toyotas pre-95 from dealers? Well, I've personally seen dealers take all the service manuals and the books from the old stuff that used to be a physical book, good old days, and throw them out. Unfortunately, some dealerships do that because they will get that one car that is pre-95 like once every 2 years, and they figure these books are taking up all this space, we're just going to toss them out and be done with them. But TIS does go. TIS is Toyota Technical Information System, which you can actually purchase access to it, techinfo.toyota.com. I'll leave that in the chat if anybody is interested in that. So that gives you access to the same dealership information system that has all their repair manuals for every single model. Goes right around 90 is when it starts fading out. So if you have a car that's 94, you will find a lot of good information. You'll find actually the book scanned and put on the website. So that would be a resource for you if you're interested. So Sharon says, owner of 2021 Sienna had issues with sliding doors, unlatching, including the driver's door. It happened just one on the main door. Is that a known problem? I have not seen that problem yet, but I will tell you this. When you close the door, or if you're closing it manually, and this problem usually happens when you close it manually. I've seen a lot of people that close it, and it's not really latched or closed, and then you take off and it happens. But if you operate it manually, I would report it. If you operate it, with power, I would report it to your dealership, because you need, this is how, if everybody buys Toyotas, never complains about everything, and they just live with the problems, Toyota doesn't know and they don't fix anything. But please, have an issue, especially with a new car like that, report it to the dealership. Even if they can't fix it, even if they tell you it's normal, still report it, because Toyota has something called like a customer's voice. So if a car makes too much noise and it's normal, you need to let them know, because come the refresh or when they change the model, they will take that customer voice and they will make the new model better. Or even sometimes if it's a big enough annoyance, like the Tacoma air conditioning having no auxiliary fan, that was a customer voice. The truck works fine, it just doesn't work fine in cold weather. They took those customer voices and they made a fix for it, made a kit. Okay, well, let's fix it. So let them know about it, let them look into it. They potentially will come back and tell you we couldn't find anything. But as far as known problems from my side, I don't see any problems with the door yet. But if there's anything known, I will include it in the video, because I pretty soon I will start making videos on the new Sienna. I think I've let a little bit of time pass, so we're somewhat familiar with them. I don't like to just... All righty, we're back. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with the internet. I fix cars, I don't fix internet. So Hossein says, can you make a video for low mileage drivers, engine oil intervals, transmission intervals, brake fluid, coolant intervals? Also, how many miles do you recommend to drive every month? So low mileage, you're going to leave mileage and you're going to go by time. So your engine oil, I recommend 6 months. On your transmission, 6 years. Brake fluid needs to be tested, but on average, 2 to 3 years. Coolant, 5 years. And then what I recommend you drive every month is not exactly miles, but you want to put weekly. You want to drive at least 10 to 15 miles every week. That would be the bare minimum. Driving at 2-3 miles every day is going to put you, again, we just talked about this, in the severe category where you're driving short, repeated trips. But if you're driving the car weekly just for the sake of driving it and getting everything moving, I would drive it at least 10 miles, 10 to 15 miles, and that gets you out of the short trip, if you would, and warms up everything, gets everything flowing. So if you're not driving this car, but you want to drive it weekly just for the sake of maintenance and upkeep, 10 to 15 miles, I would say, weekly in one single drive is the best thing. Okay, let's cover this one. I think this one is a good one for everybody. So Fahad says, can you please explain, many owners are facing this issue with the RAV4 in 2019, the hissing noise from the AC at times, but goes away after switching off the AC. Folks, this is not just the 2019 RAV4. This is actually every model. The AC makes noise. First, it is a normal noise. And I know some of the older models did not have it. It's because of the way the AC box is constructed. The evaporator is in a position where you can easily hear that noise. We've had a lot of concerns about it, and I'm with you. It's annoying, especially when you're stopped, the AC is running, and you don't have the radio on. You'll hear it's very clear. It's a clear hissing noise. And unfortunately, at this time, there is no repair for it, even though I will say this is a normal problem, but it's an annoying one. There's no repair for it at this time. I would, however, report it to the dealership, because, again, this is more of those customer voice where the more you say, the more Toyota will look into it and potentially develop a noise kit that would take care of it, where it's still there, but you don't hear it. But that's one that is not just RAV4. It's a lot of models, and almost all of them, actually, all the newer ones. So John says, I have a 2019 4.6 Tundra looking to add an external transmission cooler, but asked Toyota Parts and said, I have one given my VIN, but my truck doesn't have a towing package. Yes, so the trucks that don't have a towing package will not have the cooler. And honestly, I have not looked into potentially adding an OEM one and what are the differences, but it should be possible. And actually, in most cases, I would go aftermarket, because it's just a cooler that mounts in line, and that's about it. But going at the dealership route, you're gonna want every single bracket, every single hose, it can get a little expensive, but there are models with no towing package. Unfortunately, I don't know why. They should have all had it, but some of them do not have the towing package, and unfortunately, if you want to add it, you're gonna piece it part by part until you find everything. But I would consider looking into aftermarket in this one. So SR Hovan says 2014 Camry, glove box compartment, keep popping open 99% of the time. I go over bumps. So that's going to be a simple lock, or something is broken around the lock, either the lock itself or where it connects, where it locks onto the dash. One of them is worn. I would look into that, and that should take care of that issue, because it should not pop. Trust me, I drove a 12 Camry, which is very similar to yours. I've never had the glove box pop, so there is an issue with the lock. Even, perhaps maybe even the door is not sitting right. It's like pushed to the side where it's not completely engaging. So Play App says on RAV4 Hybrid, if 3 tires are half worn and I have purchased a new one, will this damage the all-wheel drive system? Very good question. This is one of those. So obviously don't put different tires, but when 3 tires are half worn and one of them is new, that should be okay, because you don't have a mechanical connection front to back. But what I would do, though, in this case, is replace 2 tires, because you don't want, even in a non-all-wheel drive car, by the way, you don't want to have 1 new tire on the driving wheels. You don't want to have 1 new tire and 1 half worn on the same axle. That's not very good for the drivetrain. So in your case, I would replace 2 tires, where you'd have 2 new tires and 2 half worn tires. That evens out side to side. On hybrids all-wheel drive, you don't need to even out front and back, but it's also not advisable that you use different brand tires in the front, different brand tires in the back. Keep them the same brand, but keep the axles even. So I would do 1 more tire, find the one that's worn the most, and just replace it. That way you have 2 new tires and 2 half-worn tires. So another question, just purchased a 12 Forerunner with 125,000 miles. Should I change the transmission fluid? That's a little on the edge, and I personally, I would just leave it alone. But if you want to, a drain and fill is about it, single time, and leave it alone. Don't replace it multiple times like I've seen some people do, which I don't encourage, but everybody has their opinion on that. So I enjoy the Forerunner series. I'm thinking of either a Forerunner or Tacoma for flat towed, but I know Toyota says no. Anyway, I can do this. I've been told I can with the Runner, as it has a manual transfer case. Personally, I will say this, it's not a good idea. If you get the manual transfer case where it has a neutral position, potentially yes, but I would have to look into it, because they're usually not recommended. The Tacoma for sure doesn't have a manual shifter, but the Forerunner potentially, and I'd have to look into it to make sure I give you the correct answer on that one. So another question, can the Toyota safety sense sensor be recalibrated to accommodate a lifted vehicle or relocated? No. That, at least at the dealership level, potentially aftermarket, I don't know, I don't work in the aftermarket world, but at the dealership level, it is a huge liability, because if you come in, it's possible. I'll just, between you and me, I guess this is to the world, there's no between you and me, but it is possible, because it's just a calibration, and we're inputting certain numbers to the car to tell it, this is how high the sensor is, this is how far this and that. But from a liability standpoint, there's no dealership that will sign up their own name on an open lawsuit if they calibrate this camera, and then you count on the system being calibrated and working right, and then you get an accident, then Toyota finds out, and this is where the big brother comes in and we have a problem. Toyota finds out that we calibrated this camera, that it's modified, and they'll be like, yep, you're on your own. Here's the whole lawsuit all on you, because you did not follow procedure. Procedure from Toyota is, if the car is lifted, modified, sensor has been in an impact, any kind of modifications, you cannot calibrate the system at the dealership level with the Toyota name behind it. So I would look aftermarket, because there's no dealership that will calibrate it when the car is modified or lifted. If the sensor has been relocated, that is a whole different, at that point, I wouldn't count on the system working again, because they're very sensitive and they really need those sensors to be near perfect, I would say, because they're just that sensitive. So RS says, I have a 2006 GS300 air leak on the rim, causing the tire to need air every 2 weeks. Suggestion for fix: Costco tried, no available. You're gonna need to clean the bead. I don't do a lot of tire stuff, but I'll help you there. You need to clean the sealing surface of the wheel. They usually have corrosion on them, but one thing I would look at is the wheel bent. We see this all the time where the wheel is flat bent, and that's why it's leaking. If that's the case, you're either going to want to repair it, replace it, whatever the case may be. But it is doable. But if I remember, again, I don't do a lot of tires at work, but you clean the contact area for the tire seats on, when the bead of the tire seats on the wheel, you clean that, and then there is a product that we add, and I wish I remember the name of it, that kind of seals it up so it's a flat, smooth surface, and then it dries up to seal the tire. But that's what I would look into. Make sure the wheels are not bent though. So Spencer Green, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. 2012 Tundra with front passenger airbag engine code. Is there any known fixes to this, or do I have to just replace the whole airbag? Thanks for the stream. So Spencer, I wish you would have put the codes. It has a front passenger airbag code. So the passenger airbag, you're gonna want to do a simple diagnostic, and the typical diagnostic for airbags is, and by no way I would recommend this DIY, because you need to be trained on working on airbags when they're live and you're doing live diagnosis. But I'll just give you an idea of how the airbags are diagnosed. To know, do you have a bad airbag? Do you have a wiring problem? Is the sensor bad? Sorry, I call it sensor. The airbag computer is actually called airbag sensor in the Toyota world. But we basically put a resistor. So all of these airbags, they have a resistance, and that's what the computer is checking. It checks that resistance, and it knows that that airbag is hopefully there. Because it can't, the way the computer, in a different world, blowing up the airbag is not a good idea to test it. So it's going to check that resistance. At the dealership, we have a resistor that plugs in where the airbag goes, and then usually let the computer do its self-check. And then if the code is gone when you plugged in your resistor, that means your airbag is bad, but all your wiring is good. But if you plug in your resistor, airbag is no good. The self-check is no good. You still have the same code, then potentially you have a wiring problem. And at that point, you can go down the wire, plug the next point, unplug the next point, plug in your resistor until you find a place where you plug your resistor and everything is good. Then you trace your steps back and you know there's a wire. But typically, it's usually an airbag. But make sure, one thing that I see common mistake all the time, airbag light is on and you have occupant detection codes. This car has been in an accident recently. It could be the calibration for the seat, very simple calibration that can be done at a dealership, but people start replacing sensors and wires and computers and all kinds of stuff. If you see any occupant detection codes ever on a Toyota, you need to check another computer for codes, because occupant detection has a separate computer that stores codes. So if you see that code in the airbag that says occupant detection malfunction, you need to check elsewhere to find actually what's going on with it. All right. So let's continue on. So Greg, I like this question. This is one that you guys are going to like. How do you calibrate the speedometer after installing taller tires? Do you know that there was a calibration in, I wouldn't call it a calibration, but it is like a compensation adjustment, if you would. You can go in TechStream and it's a customization. Some models, I can't list exactly the models that have it, but some models you can actually go in TechStream, go to customization in main body, and then you can add or subtract from your speedometer. I think it goes up to 4 miles an hour each way, but let's say you install the taller tires, you notice you check your speedometer against the GPS, and then you notice that it's completely out on one way or another. You can actually compensate for that by adjusting it, and then the speedometer will actually start acting to it, and then it's all calibrated. But there's no like calibration per se where you say, oh, let's start the calibration, drive the car, make sure. No, it's more of, if we have a variance of up to 4 miles an hour either way, plus or minus, you can compensate for that with the scan tool. Lexus man, thank you so much for your super sticker, sir. Lambert, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I will definitely enjoy that vacation. This is the first vacation since the channel started, so which we are coming up to the 1 year mark pretty soon here. Okay, so I'm looking at a comment here that folks try to keep your comments like in one block, even if it's very long. I don't mind. I don't know if there's a comment word limit, because I almost missed this one. So Lathe has ES330 that has been making a weird noise at startup. Changed the oil at 7,300 miles. Drive mostly highway. Not sure if it was oil was engine was cold. It also runs sluggish. So Lathe, there's no fuel filter for that car. Most newer Toyotas don't have fuel filters anymore. And the one thing I would tell you, the noise in the morning, these engines, especially when it's cold, when it's really cold, they will make a little bit of a ticking noise and then it'll go away. If it goes away, I'm not worried. As far as the sluggish, you want to clean throttle body, check maintenance, spark plugs, go through the standard procedure. But the noise that they make in the morning could be normal. I wouldn't invest too much time and especially money into it, chasing after something that goes away when it warms up. So Alexa says, how are the lithium-ion batteries in comparison to the nickel? So I've talked about this briefly. Alexa, I don't know if you saw it at the beginning of the video, but I'm gonna make a video on this. There's pros and cons. It's a long conversation. I don't want to take up the whole live stream for this, but the brief thing I will say is nickel metal hydride has been tried, true, and proven. Lithium ion is new. Lithium ion does have better things than nickel metal, but also has worse things. So there's a catch. And all I can tell you is, briefly, the main reason we have lithium ions in cars is weight. Go figure. Because nickel metal hydride batteries, I don't know if you've seen one, I've carried multiple and my back remembers. So they're very heavy. Okay. Luxus Man says, long live the 2JZ. I agree, sir. I can't, it's been a while since we've been like an old school Supra with a 2JZ in the dealership. I think the last one was in for some weird speedometer problem. But it's been a while then I've worked on the 2JZ. Maybe we should change that soon. Should get ourselves a old school Supra here in the shop to film with. So Yeti says, how often do we change the filter in the Toyota Corolla Hybrid? Just bought 2021. So I'm assuming you're referring to the fan filter. I would check it every month. If it's clean, move that to 3 months. If it's still clean, move it to a year and see. There's a point where you're going to drive it 10 years, and there's certain people who will drive the car 10 years and they will not have a single issue, and some people will have to clean it monthly. It depends on your use, how you use that back seat and all. So Lucas says, what's your opinion in the 5.0 V8 from Lexus? What are the pros and cons of that engine? Honestly, that 5.0 V8 is a derivative, I'm trying to say that word, of the UR series engine, so the 5746. It's modified, of course, and honestly, they're really reliable. From we don't work on them a lot, especially I work at a Toyota dealership. We don't get them as constant as our Lexus, but talking to the Lexus guys that I know that specifically work on these things, they don't have a lot of problems. They're really basic. Again, they're modified to have higher horsepower, but they're still very basic. They have a few oil leaks here and there, but nothing catastrophic or major, at least when they're not modified. So just bought a brand new Sienna. Manual says change the oil 10,000 miles. Should I do the first at 1,000 or 5,000? Personally, I would change it at 1,000, 5,000, and then every 5,000 after that. The first 1,000 oil change is heavily debated. It's up to you, especially if you're doing it yourself. I would, because you're going to get metal shavings out of that engine, which are normal for the break-in. But if that's the official end of the break-in period, I would replace that oil. You can't cause harm by replacing oil early, but you can cause a lot of good if you do. So I'll leave that one up to you, but personally, I would do it at 1,000, 5,000, then 5,000, every 5,000 after that. So, Will, have you heard Tacoma 3.5 blowing smoke on an incline? This makes me want to purchase a used 4.0 Tacoma or Forerunner. So the 3.5 did have a few issues with that, but they are limited to a specific batch, if you would, that had bad valve guides from the factory. Now, I really doubt you're going to find one out there that still has this issues, that because eventually it gets so bad that there's clouds of smoke behind them. But this was a specific production problem, and it even affected other models with that same 3.5. But I wouldn't say this is a common problem. And if you're avoiding the 16 to 17 years when you're looking for one with the 3.5, you should have no issues. I don't think you're going to have that smoke on an incline issue from the valve guides. But if you're going with the Forerunner will be more reliable. But the older Tacoma with the 4.0, it is very reliable if you can find one in good shape. And usually people who keep them in good shape, they don't really sell them. And they're hard to find in good shape or with normal miles, except the very high miles. So Kat says, you mentioned the Carista app. I saw someone says she used it and got the Christmas tree of air lights and couldn't take the car in because it voided the warranty. Is it safe? I don't know about that, because Carista doesn't have two-way communication except in a very specific scenario where you can do the tire pressure monitor. But if you're just reading codes or doing customization, something went south there. Either in the middle of the process, something got cut or broken, or your phone died, or the car shut off. That's the only thing. But as far as voiding the warranty, there's actually no record in the scan tool that you had a scan tool connected, unless you left it connected and went to the dealership and they were, of course, like, ooh, you have something connected here that caused everything to break. But at a dealership level, when we get a car with a Christmas tree, and we usually don't question, wait, did you have something hooked up here? I don't see it, it's not there. We're going to connect it, see what's going on. And usually if I erase everything, drive the car as everything is fine, okay, well, let's take it for one last drive and see if everything is fine. If everything is fine, then we're going to let it go for now and say could not find any problems, because I can't keep, driving your car around and around and around for a check engine light that doesn't come back, and an issue that I couldn't find to begin with, like when it has some random codes of problems that are not there. So I don't know about that one. I think there is more to that story than what they were willing to share, if you would. So David, thank you so much for your super chat. How hard is it to replace the VVTi oil line on a 2007 Sienna? I bought the full metal OEM line. So the VVTi line is a little bit more difficult on an 07 Sienna than, say, an 11 and up, because of the power steering pump. It's right in front of the line, and you have to take it out. And doing this on the floor can be a little bit cumbersome. It's not impossible. It's nothing like this is a nightmare, but it's harder to do it on the floor. If you're up, the power steering pump will have two bolts. And once you pop the bolt out, once the pump is out, to replace your line. It's not really that difficult. If you're jumping in a job this big, I'm assuming you have the know-how and some skills, some DIY skills, or even if you're a mechanic. But once the pump is out, the difficult part about it is there's a bushing that you need to push in that actually locks the power steering in place. it can be a little bit difficult to just push that bushing back enough so you can put the power steering pump back and put the bolts through. But that's really the only thing. It is a little bit of a cumbersome area because you got the body of the car in the way and you're trying to maneuver everything out. But that's really it. Once you take it out, take the side, the top, like dog bone mount, if you want to call it that. There is a plastic cover with two 10mm bolts. Take that out. The line has two 17s. It's one 17 on the valve cover, and then the other 17 bolt is right behind the power steering pump. There's one more 10mm bolt holding the actual line to the front cover, and the line comes out. But one thing, if you decided to do this job, there is a filter on the top bolt where it bolts onto the valve cover. When you take that bolt, make sure that filter, you take it out, needle nose pliers, just pull it out, give it a quick clean, put it back, and don't just put the bolt back, because I've seen them where they get crushed by the bolt because they're sitting sideways and they break, and now you have debris all over the place. So that's the only thing I would watch for. Noah Scott, thank you so much for joining us, sir. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your super chat. So James says, I have a 2001 Lexus LS 430. Me and you are great friends because I love that car. If I don't let it warm up long enough, it will downshift hard on the first brake application. Look into the the transmission fluid level, and that's a typical, the first thing I would check. Make sure it's clean, make sure it's full, and that the level is where I'm looking at here. There is how hard of a brake application will also could, where you slam on your brakes and it's trying to downshift and it's cold, so it doesn't have as good of an operation. But I would check the fluid level. If it only happens when it's cold, I would check the fluid level because that could be it. So this is a good one. Chad and Melissa says, what's your thoughts between a new Forerunner and a Lexus GX 470? And you said 470, and that's specific. You didn't say 460. So honestly, I would go with the Forerunner, and that's just me, because the GX is as ancient as the Forerunner, is as reliable, and it's great. But the prices are a lot more for essentially buying the same car with a suit and a bigger V8 that is more of a pain to work on if you ever have obviously more expensive labor. I would go with the Forerunner, honestly, because Forerunners are holding their value a lot more than the GX. Wait till people realize, and sorry, we lost the connection again. Let's wait for it to come back. What's going on with the internet here today? Let's wait for the connection to come back. There we go. We're back. Sorry, guys. Again, don't know it's bad internet today. So the Forerunner, I would go with the Forerunner because they're holding up their value a lot better. And even though they're harder to buy and more expensive to buy, I personally like the Forerunner. I feel like the GX is basically a Forerunner dressed in a suit. And off-road wise, you take a car with leather seats and all these fancy Lexus stuff. I don't know. It kind of makes it at a disadvantage in an off-roading situation. Kind of like the newest Land Cruiser, $98,000 off-roading car, if you would. That kind of doesn't fly a lot with people. But personally, I'd go with the Forerunner. But if you're just looking at reliability, they're both very similar. The Lexus having a little bit of a disadvantage over the Forerunner in reliability just because of that big V8 and a tiny engine bay. Well, it's not tiny, but tiny considering the V8. Otherwise, they're both good cars, but personally, I'd go with the Forerunner. So, folks, unfortunately, I have to tie up the live stream pretty soon because I have some family matters to attend to, preparing for that big vacation, you know? So I'll take 3 more questions this time. I'll just take random questions. Let's see. So let's take this one. So 2021 RAV4 TRD 825 AFKS 2.5 liter engine, 3 weeks old. Initial start idling will make some kind of rattling, whining, electrical sound for about 10 to 20 seconds. Then the sound will fade away. And that is completely normal, and I am completely upset right with you. I understand that it is concerning, and I'm with you. It just sounds like there's a problem, but it's completely normal, and take my word for it, please. Because all that's going on is the computer will turn on the high pressure pump and max to pressurize everything, and then it'll turn on the direct injectors, and it'll keep doing this back and forth until it smooths out. That's until it goes out of direct injection mode into port injection, and that is completely normal. Yes, it is annoying and super loud, but that's the way they are designed, unfortunately. All that efficiency and high mileage, it comes at a cost, and that's just the way it is. And Dave, I won't count this as a question, and we'll still take 2 questions. Dave W says, do you cut your own hair? If not, why the heck not? I agree. I don't cut my own hair because I'm not very artistic with the hair department, but my beautiful wife does, and I really appreciate her for doing that. And by the way, I'll tell you something about that. She is the sheriff in town. She does read all the comments as well, and she comments here and there. And I won't let you know what her username is, but huge shout out to her for many things. And I'll just take a moment here, if you all don't mind. She is the hero of this channel, truly the unsung hero. She puts up with all my grumpiness when the video is not going right. Folks, I fix cars for a living. I don't edit videos and do all this stuff, so everything is new to me when I do this channel. But she puts up with me for a lot of things. She encourages me. And actually, she was the main reason for this channel, as you know it, because she was the one that encouraged me to start this channel. Before that, I would be like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can figure out all the editing. All this seems like a lot of work. But she was the one that encouraged me, helped me a lot, and still do. So, guys, let's give a huge shout out to Mrs. Car Care Nut. She's probably watching, and she will give me a speech for saying this, but I had to because she deserves it. So let's take 2 last questions. So this is another one. Have you had issues with the RAV4 Adventure roof rails leaking into the car headliner? Any updates from Toyota on the repair? So I have seen a single case. There is the issue is under investigation. Officially, there's no fix yet. But the problem is, some people have been saying it's only 2019, and there's a whole mixed bag of problems, of information on this. But so far, there's no official repair. The issue is under investigation. I unofficially spoke to somebody at Toyota who have said, yes, they know about some issues, and they're trying to look into it. But I've only seen one issue so far. And remember, the forums, you might be 20, 30 people. I see hundreds of RAV4s every week. So this is not as widely spread as you might think. It's not every single car. That's what Toyota is trying to determine. Is it a batch of cars? Is it a day the car was made? They're trying to figure this out. And if I know anything new, I will update you on this matter. So let's take the last question. And as the tradition of the channel, I will take the last question because the last is always first. So, 2007 Tundra 4.7. Will I jeopardize the famous longevity of the engine if I add a supercharger and other performance mods? That's a very good question. So every time you modify any car, like to get more performance or power out of it, you will affect the reliability. That is a given. There is no going around it. However, I will say one thing. How much are you affecting that reliability depends on you. So you got to understand, when you start pushing more power out of this engine, that it was designed safely to run at this, even though Toyota is very conservative with their power numbers and tuning, very conservative. You can easily double it, as the case with the 2JZ. You can double things up and they're still fine. But you want to follow it up with good maintenance, good fuel. Fuel becomes a very big factor with supercharged cars. You want to follow it up with good maintenance. And before you modify your truck, you want to make sure the engine's healthy. Perhaps pop a valve cover, look inside, everything's clean, check compression. Put, of course, new spark plugs, potentially different spark plugs. If you're putting a good kit, that will change the spark plugs as well to a different spark plug. But check the overall condition of the engine and make sure you follow it up with really extra good maintenance afterwards, and the effect on reliability will be minimal. Don't expect to run it all day long at full power and it still be reliable. Just normal driving, of course, with more power, you're going to tend to pedal to the metal a lot, but overall, take care of the truck and it'll take care of you, even with a supercharger. Folks, thank you so much for attending the live stream, for watching the channel, for all your support and all your love. I really appreciate it. And I'm going on vacation, so hopefully we'll have fun. I will be disconnected, like I told you. I want to dedicate this time to my family. They deserve it. They're a priority to me. So wish me luck on the vacation. This is the first vacation in almost a year. So until the next live stream, until the next video, guys, I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Everybody who joined the live stream and everybody who did the super chat and left all the messages, I really appreciate it. Until the next live stream, guys, which will be probably in a week or two, most likely two, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you guys have a wonderful day.